Hi, my dear students. A happy morning to all. Myself, Anush Shashidharan, Biology faculty. As you know, in the last session, we have discussed the formation of male gametophyte called pollen grains and the female gametophyte called embryo sac. Today, I am going to talk about another important concept, that is pollination. Do you know what is the meaning of pollination? Pollination means the transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. Clear? It is the process of transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma. Depending on the source of pollen grains, pollination can be divided into two main categories. That is, self-pollination and cross-pollination. What is self-pollination? Self-pollination means the transfer of pollen grains from anther of a flower to the stigma of the same flower or stigma of another flower of the same plant. Such type of pollination we can call it as self-pollination. Clear? Cross-pollination means the transfer of pollen grains from anther of a flower to stigma of another flower of another plant. Okay. There are two different types of self-pollination, that is autogamy and geitonogamy. What is autogamy? We said pollination occurs in the same flower. That means the transfer of pollen grains from anther of a flower to stigma of the same flower. Such type of self-pollination we can call it as autogamy. Some type of plants like viola or common pansy, oxalis and camelina, such type of plant produce two type of flowers. That means chasmogamous flowers and cleistogamous flowers. What is the meaning of chasmogamous flowers? Chasmogamous flowers which are similar to flowers of other species with exposed anthers and stigma. But what is the meaning of cleistogamous flowers? Cleistogamous flowers means such type of flowers are do not open at all. That means all the anther and stigma are actually enclosed in the flower petal. The flower petal should not open at all. That means the cleistogamous flowers are invariably autogamous as there is no chance of cross pollination. Clear? This is actually one of the most important characteristic feature or adaptation of an autogamous flower. Such type of flowers, the only one possibility of pollination, that is autogamy. The cross pollination will not occur in such type of flowers. Clear? Why? Because the flower petals are not at all open. So clear? That means in case of cleistogamous flowers, it can produce assured seed set even in the absence of pollinators. Means suppose you think about there will be no pollinators, the cleistogamous flowers can be able to produce the seeds. Okay. Then second one, what is the meaning of geitonogamy? Geitonogamy means the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma of another flower of the same plant. You know, geitonogamy is functionally a cross-pollination. Why? Because one pollinating agent is needed. But you think about it, genetically it is similar to autogamy. Why? Because the process of pollination occur in the same plant. means there will be no genetic recombination. So the chances of evolution may be very, very less. You are very familiar. The genetic recombination is needed for the process of evolution. In case of autogamous and geitongamous flowers, the rate of evolution may be very, very less. Is it clear? Second category is called cross-pollination, I said. That means the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to another flower of the transfer of pollen grains from anther of a flower to the stigma of another flower of another plant. That means it can always occur between the flowers of different plants, but it always in the same species. Xenogamy is also called allogamy. This is the only one type of pollination which can be able to which can be able to help the process of evolution. Why? Because this is the only one type of pollination which help or which brings genetically different types of offsprings. Why? Because in xenogamy there is a recombination of different genes coming from the male parent and the female parent. This is the overall outline about different types of pollination. It's clear? When you consider the cross-pollination, it always occurs between the flowers of two different plants. That means one of the agent is needed for cross-pollination. Now we are going to discuss about different types of or different agents of pollination. Pollinating agents can be broadly classified into two categories. That is abiotic factors and biotic factors. Abiotic means non-living factors and biotic means living factors. Most important abiotic factors are wind and water. If the pollination occurs with the help of wind, such type of pollination we can call it as anemophily. If the pollination occurs by water, such type of pollination what we can say it is called hydrophily. If the pollination achieved with the help of insects, such type of pollination we can call it as entomophily. If the pollination occur by birds, such type of pollination what we can say it is called ornithophily. If it occur by bat, what we can say it is called caropterophily. Some cases the pollination could be achieved with the help of snails. Such type of pollination we can call it as malacophily. And if the pollination occur by ant, such type of pollination we can call it as myrmecophily. Is it clear? These are different agents of pollination. Now we are going to learn the characteristic features of wind pollinating flowers. That means we have discussed so many pollinating agents. Each and every plant or flowers, they are having some adaptive features to perform such type of pollination. First of all, we are going to learn the characteristic features or adaptive features present in wind pollinating flowers. First of all, the first point is that the pollen grains of wind pollinating flowers are always light and non-sticky. What's the meaning? Light means lightweight, so that they can be transported easily in the wind current. Third point, the flowers they are having well exposed stamens, so that the pollens are easily dispersed into wind current. Next one, they are having large, often feathery stigma. Because of the presence of feathery stigma, they can easily trap the airborne pollen grains. Most of the wind pollinating flowers, they are having a single ovule in each ovary. Okay. Next one is very important. We can see in most of the wind pollinating flowers, they are having inflorescence. Do you know what is the meaning of inflorescence? You have learned in class plus one, inflorescence means the arrangement of flowers on a common axis. This is actually the diagrammatic representation of a plant called a corn-cob. Okay, this inflorescence we can call it as tassels. Okay, the tassels of corn-cob now you are seeing is nothing but the stigma and the style. Okay, this actually the stigma and the style which are strongly woven in the wind to trap the pollen grains. The last point, wind pollination is quite common in grasses. These are the most important characteristic features of wind pollinating flowers. Second one, we are going to learn the adaptive features or characteristic features of water pollination. Pollination by water is quite rare in flowering plants and are limited to about 30 genera and mostly seen in monocotyledonous plants. Do you remember in class plus one we have seen two major groups of plants like bryophytes and pteridophytes. In case of bryophytes and pteridophytes, you remember water acts as a medium for the transfer of male gametes towards the female gametes. That's why you are very familiar. The distribution of such plants are very limited because of the need for water for the transport of male gametes. I hope you remember the bryophytes, we can call it as amphibians of the plant kingdom. Why? Because water as a source needed by the plant for the transfer of male gametes towards the female gametes. Some of the examples of water pollinating plants. First one, Vallisneria and Hydrilla. These two plants are actually freshwater forms. And Sostera, it's also called sea grasses. It's actually a marine plant which also performing water pollination. In majority of aquatic plants such as water hyacinths and water lily, the flowers are emerged above the level of water and are pollinated by insects or wind. Okay, now we are going to discuss in detail the process of water pollination in Vallisneria. This is actually the diagrammatic representation of Vallisneria. In case of Vallisneria, this is the female flowers. The female flower reach the surface of water by a long stalk. See, because of the presence of a long stalk, the female flowers must reach on the surface of the water. The pollen grains or the male flowers are released into the water body and these flowers are actually carried passively by the water current. Some of them, the male flower, they eventually reach the female flowers or the stigma. What can occur? The pollination could be achieved. Then the pollen grains of such plants means the water pollinating plants, they are long and ribbon like pollen. They are having long and ribbon like pollen. The pollen grains have mucilaginous covering. Do you know what is the importance of mucilaginous covering? Because they need protection. Why? Because the pollen grains actually present in water. Okay, then next one, the flowers are not at all colorful and they do not produce nectar. Why? Because the pollination occur with the help of water, not by insects. Now we are going to discuss the characteristic features of animal pollinating flowers, especially insect pollinating flowers. Insect pollinating flowers are large, colorful, and they are having fragrance. Clear? Then in some cases, the flowers they can produce the foul odors. Such type of flowers can be able to produce nectar. Okay, in such type of insect pollination, nectar and pollen grains actually act as floral rewards. Okay, nectar and pollen grains are usual floral rewards. You think about it, if a particular insect it can perform pollination, the insects can get the nectar and pollen grains as a reward. In return, the plant can be able to achieve the process of pollination. In some species of plants like Amorphophallus, we can see that the floral rewards are providing in safe places to lay the eggs. For example, I said in Amorphophallus, the plant actually providing safe places to lay the eggs of the insect. Another important relationship occurs between a moth and a plant named yucca. Yucca is actually a plant. A moth and this plant having some close relationship. What is the relationship? The moth and the plants, they can't be able to complete their life cycle without each other. Why? Because the moth deposits its egg in the locule of the ovary and the flower in return get pollinated by the moth. That means without this relationship, both of them can't be able to finish their life cycle.